I got 4 cars and they all black, got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling.
What's up, Sal?
I'm RJ, this is Dos.
And Tres. This week we're gonna go into a Cowboys video. Finally, our bread and butter, getting back to it. We're all decked out in our jerseys, ready for this.
Shout out 9.
We're gonna talk about all the different trades, fantasy and reality trades. I mean, since the Cowboys got $14 million in cap space, all Cowboys fans can think about is who's the team gonna add to the roster. Every fan of any team's always thinking about who can they trade, because everyone wants the best players on their team. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that and some of the free agents that are available too.
Not like the Warrior style though. Not like that.
So the first player that we want to talk about is the Jets defensive lineman, Sheldon Richardson. This guy's been on the trade block rumor for like the past 2 seasons, and the Jets were really shopping him during the last season's trade deadline and actually reached out to the Cowboys to see if they wanted to have a go at him. And I think the price was definitely a little too high. They wanted a first-round pick. That's not going to happen. Now Richardson's, got the franchise tag. He's set to make $8 million this year, and the Jets, I don't know if they really want to give him a long-term deal. Most likely not. This guy, he could basically be that hitman for the defensive line. You bring him in for 1 year, pay him the $8 million. They can afford him now. He can move all over the defensive line. I think he's more so a 3-4 defensive end, but he's played all over. He even played linebacker this year for the Jets. Todd Bowles was really putting him all over the field, and he was open to that, and half not open to that. He's made some comments off the field about his dissatisfaction with either his teammates or the Jets organization. But I think if you bring him onto the Dallas defensive line, he's really a force that you can pair up with the young guys that would really take the pressure off of them.
Yeah, with Sheldon, he's had some trouble before, the news and the media or whatever, and him posting a snap for the game saying like screw this game, whatever. But when you change environments, it really can make a difference with the players, and especially with a player, with the Cowboys being the team that can win right now, which you're dumb to think that they don't have a chance this year, one of the best chances this year. You're willing to take a risk on a guy like Sheldon who's getting paid $8 million a year. Hell, you have the money now with the $14 million freed up, because you can win right now. It's a win-win.
And really, you could just get him on that cheap 1-year deal. You don't have to go anything past that. If you're really all in for the Super Bowl this year, which I think most fans hope they are, and I think they have the potential even without him to get there, adding that piece to the defensive line would just be a big boost for them.
Exactly.
So of all the trades we're going to talk about today, I think Richardson is the most probable, just because the Jets were offering him up to pretty much anyone, but mostly specifically the Cowboys, and because he fills a need that the Cowboys are desperately searching to fill.
Alright, so our second guy, we're going to go and talk about Aqib Talib. Towards the end of the season, and especially with everybody's making so much money on the Broncos defense this coming season, Talib is one that they've talked about maybe being on the trade block and being the most likely to be traded from that defensive side of the ball. He's going to be making in the range of anywhere between 11 and 12 million this year, which it's a pretty high cap hit, but this past year, he was on the top boards of Pro Football Focus. He balled out this past year. I think I want to say he led the league in pick sixes also, and he was just really locked down, absolutely. Even some games he stayed with the speedster, Tyreek Hill, stride for stride. He's just shut down cornerback, and he would be someone that would really be, even though with the young development of these guys coming into training camp, the rookies that they drafted, I feel like he'd be a substantial boost just because he's so aggressive.
There's 3 things here with Talib, and one is that he's a veteran. With so many rookies on this team, he could be a guy that could really teach them how to develop their game and become a true NFL corner. And 2, he's from Dallas. That could be a plus or a con, because he has gotten in some trouble while being in Dallas. But I think that he'd really enjoy coming home and playing for, probably his favorite team growing up. And then the third thing is that, his cap hit is high, but this guy pretty much is definitely worth the money. I would say he's definitely a top 3 cornerback in the league right now.
Yeah, most definitely after coming off this past season.
Now, just because the cap hit is so high, the probability isn't high, but being that he could possibly be a cap casualty coming probably after this season, I think he'll definitely be on the Cowboys' radar. Next is a guy that everyone's been talking about in this offseason, and while it's crazy that he would actually want to leave this team and that this team would actually be exploring to let go of him, and it's Richard Sherman, the premier, everyone knows cornerback in the league. It's debatable whether he's the best or not, but he's definitely been up there, and in the scheme that they play in Seattle, he really fits. And that's a thing why him going to Dallas would fit, because Dallas plays a good zone defense and he could fit into that well. Supposedly he told told close friends that he wanted to play for Dallas. The rumor was that he only wanted to go to the Patriots, but this rumor came out afterwards. High ticket guy, getting up there in age, kind of like Talib. That's the thing with these corners, they're big names, but whenever you start to hear their names in trades and release rumors, it's just because of their age. Richard Sherman's productivity has slightly declined, but he's still an elite corner.
Yeah, with Sherman, it's something that a lot of, especially on Facebook all the time, oh, Sherman to the Cowboys, whatever, that's been circulating around. The only thing is, considering this past year's draft and then the age of you get with guys like Talib and Sherman, even though they're right now, I'd pick Talib over Sherman. That's just me, though. When you start correlating their age with everything else and the draft that happened just this past year and so much talent that came out of it, it's really not likely. I mean, unless for both sides it's really a win-win, which I wouldn't see happening. But out of all the cornerbacks that maybe the Cowboys would be after, I think maybe Sherman could be the most likely.
Another thing that kind of, ties both of these corners together and why their names are possibly coming up in trade rumors is that they've both kind of been, off the field and on the field issues, some high severity and some low severity. So maybe a team is looking to get rid of that. I would personally say that Sherman would be a little more harsh in the locker room just coming into the Cowboys. Maybe he would want to try and immediately take over the leader, but there's definitely already a leader there in Sean Lee. I think those two guys would probably clash, and I don't think it would be as good as maybe a Talib coming in.
Yeah, I think Talib would be more of a guy that would get along with guys like Dez and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And even though Talib has his antics on the field, I feel like as a cornerback, you have to have that swagger to you in order to be successful in this league.
You're going to notice a common theme with all these guys. They're all mostly defense. But what I'll say to that is whenever the Cowboys started their dynasty in the 90s, what did they do? Through the draft, they built a solid team, mostly a great offense. But the guys that they brought in, the hitmen that they brought in, were Charles Haley and Deion Sanders. And those are the two guys that propelled that dynasty. I mean, those were the final two pieces they needed. That's why we're looking at defensive pieces. This is what they need. Their offense is stacked. But defense has always been that weak spot that comes back to haunt them whenever it counts the most.
Yeah, one thing with these guys, obviously you can tell they're football smart. They have all of it takes to be successful on the field. And one thing in those years when Jimmy was taking in Charles, he asked him, well, he's a headache or whatever. But they told him, well, he's a smart guy. Where he said, well, hell, I can work with him. Then if he's a smart guy, I can work with him. One thing he said was, hit me on the head with a hammer if I ever take a dumb guy. And that's just the main thing here is whoever you're going to get, at least make sure it's someone that you can work with and that can come and fit in.
Now, this last guy got us both really excited. This is the guy that our biggest fantasy trade, I guess you could say, out of all the guys we're going to talk about. We both got really, really excited when the rumor came out, and that's NaVorro Bowman, the linebacker for the 49ers. Now, before we get into anything with Bowman, everyone knows how great of a player he is, but just imagine Bowman, Sean Lee, and Jalen Smith. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna be able to do anything with those three guys. And the biggest thing with Bowman, if they got him, you're finally adding a playmaker for Rod Marinelli, and he really deserves, that little incentive because he's been a great defensive coordinator with whatever they handed him. And this year he's gonna have to work with a lot of rookies. Adding another leader like Bowman with Sean Lee, that would be the core of the team. If Bowman were to somehow get released, which was the rumor, and then the other rumor that came out following that was that the 49ers were looking to trade him during the draft process, I mean, that would be amazing.
Out of all the guys that we just mentioned, Bowman would be the safest, most productive, absolute straight impact player, considering the core that you already have at the linebacking position with Jalen and Sean. That would be absolute just fantasy, Dreamville all the time. Shout out J. Cole. But yeah. Man, when we first heard it, I mean, it was kind of circulated by a guy that likes to bring up a little controversy or whatever, but there has to be some truth to that, especially him saying also, he just said about them maybe shopping him during the draft. That starts all coming together and stuff where you're like, well, something has to be there, especially with them getting Reuben Foster, maybe. But I think part of it has to be true. With something coming out, something has to be true about it. So if they were to go get a guy, Bowman would be, especially for Rod, Bowman would be just, man, I get so excited just thinking about it. But I mean, It's just fantasy right now.
There's two halves to the truth of this coin. Like, if they were to release him, the truth there would be, hey, they drafted Reuben Foster, they're trying to get young, and they don't want to take Bowman's big hit that's probably coming up in his salary. So, okay, I could see that. That's possible. But then the other half of that coin is that your new GM, John Lynch, is very defensive-minded. He's a very leadership-focused guy, and Bowman is definitely the leader of the 49ers, probably team as a whole, and he's a great player and has done nothing to, sway that. This is really a 50-50 thing. The only reason why I really bought into this rumor was because Evan Silva of RotoWorld actually corroborated the story, and he's been a pretty, solid guy as far as NFL reporting goes, so that made me believe it. If it's true, all 31 other teams are going to be jumping on him. But I think the Cowboys and then possibly the Patriots are the only two teams that can offer him a closer chance to the Super Bowl and have the cap space.
Exactly. So out of all the guys that we just talked about trading, that's going to be all. We're going to get into some free agency, guys that are out there that could make an impact. First guy we're going to get into is going to be Daryl Washington. He's been out of the league for a little bit due to suspensions and stuff, but he was an absolute baller for the Cardinals and a beast, and he would fit the Cowboys perfectly. Plus, just like we were saying with Bowman, with the core already, just something to strengthen up the core. He's a guy... After the Hardy situation, I don't know how Dallas would feel about it. Daryl's in Dallas. Right now, Daryl Washington lives in Dallas. He's at home, and he's come out personally saying that he would want to help Jerry lift the Lombardi Trophy. And when you hear stuff like that, with the talent of a player, he's been out for so long, he hasn't gotten into any trouble. He looks to be staying in shape, getting his life situated out, or already has it situated out, whatever that is. It's hard not to go ahead and give the guy an opportunity like that. I don't think he's anywhere near the level of, mentality as far as Hardy or Headache, considering he's been out of the game for a little bit and he is where he is now. Nothing's happened. He's good on paper, whatever it is. We don't know his personal life or whatever, but right now on paper he's good. And like I've said before, when you're a team that can win now, that has a shot of getting to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl this year, when you're a game away from that last year, it's hard not to just take a peek, just take a look, just lift the blind and just kick the tires, maybe something.
Well, they have been taking a look at Washington, and what I'll say is that he hasn't been out of the league for a little bit. He's been out of the league for 3 years. That's a long time. Just being away from the sport for that long, I don't know if he's going to be able to get up to anywhere near the level that he was. And then going back to Greg Hardy, I believe that Greg Hardy said something similar whenever he was a free agent. I want to go help Jerry Jones lift up the Lombardi Trophy. We all know how that turned out. I really think that Stephen Jones is running this office now. I think maybe Greg Hardy was the last strain of Jerry Jones' reign. I don't think Washington's gonna happen. I don't really think that he would be a perfect fit either, because he played 3-4 middle linebacker, not 4-3 middle linebacker. It'd still be a transition. That, and the team has really been saying that they wanted to stay young. And you have two young linebackers in Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson. You can say what you want about them. Personally, I think Hitchens is out the door.
I think Zaza has the most upside though.
Yeah, that's what everyone said in the preseason. Unfortunately, he got injured. I think Wilson showed some good playing tape last year. I think he should have the first shot over even Hitchens, because Hitchens, that dude cannot cover over the middle of the field. He just looks like a deer in the headlights. He's always looking back like this, and it started with the first game of the season against the Giants. Darrelle, the guy who got benched, who didn't play hardly any for the Giants, and he made him look like a freaking scrub. That was frustrating. Whenever I think of all these guys, that's why I got excited for Bowman. Bowman is, he's a little older. He had an injury, but the dude is just a true leader. I'd much rather have him on the team rather than taking a gamble on a guy who we definitely don't know anything about as far as playing ability, just because of that span of years. Every other guy we are going to talk about or have talked about, at least there's tape to go off of, and you could set an expectation. Recent tape. I just don't think Washington is going to make the roster or even get a tryout. So the last free agent we want to talk about is a guy who's been rumored to the Cowboys, and that's Darrelle Revis. So Des Bryant tweeted at Revis and told him, this culture that we're building over here, you'd be a perfect fit. Des, his motto last season was iron sharpens iron, and Darrelle Revis has been one of the best corners in the league. Last year was a down year for him, but everybody has bad years, I'll say that. He's 32, but before that, he didn't show any signs of slowing down, and he even came back from an ACL injury. So I think the potential is still there for him. time to make a comeback. Being that, like I said before, with all the young corners, this is the perfect guy. Out of all the corners we talked about, this is the perfect guy for them to learn from. He has been the mainstay in the NFL for a decade. If there's anybody that could give them any tips on how to become, you know, a true shutdown corner, I think it's Darrelle Revis. Plus, he's never been the guy who has really been any kind of distraction in the locker room. The only thing you can say about him is that he wants to make money, but who doesn't want to make money in the NFL? You can't really fault him to that. And he's not, even if they do sign him, he's not going to be making $8 million a year. I mean, at the most, maybe $6 million. But I mean, I think that would be pushing it. I think he would want to win another Super Bowl. I know I would. So I think you got to bring him in at least. I mean, Dez tweeted that out for a reason. And, you know, the Cowboys have been really good at listening to their players.
There's a lot of things that factor into this. First, the Nolan Carroll DWI. Second, the environment in which you want to look at with Revis was in, just like with Richardson. You know, he was playing with the Jets last year. He had little to no, absolutely no help back there at all.
Motivation.
Or motivation back there. Anyways, that's the Jets. Anyway, we'll get back. Yeah. And the third one is he's getting paid by the Jets already $6 million this year. So there's no rush. Him being already just, you know, financially stable. He's knowing he's going to get that money. I would say that would factor in hopefully Dallas maybe signing him to a veteran bare minimum. Nothing over what he's making right now from the Jets that he's not even playing with them. I wouldn't mind it at all. I think it'd be great for the young guys there. And like I said, environment of play. When you bring a guy from over there to here, strong culture foundation with Garrett and everything's established, and a guy like Dez who just tweeted at him, I think it could really make a change of face, just totally flip the coin for him.
Another thing about Revis is that he's known as one of the hardest working players in the NFL. But the downside of that is that his trainer for the past 10 years hasn't heard from him at all this offseason, which is rare because usually once the season is done, boom, he's in the door, he's ready to get to work. That's a little shaky there because for a guy to have a routine for the past 10 years to break it, I don't know if maybe he's not all into play. But hopefully with the incentive of possibly going to a team that is on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl will be enough to get him back in the door.
Alright, as we all know, there's been a couple other free agents talks out there with Decker. Macklin just got signed today. That's done. But as far as the receivers that are still out there, we don't bother really. Right now, there's just a structural foundation right there with the wide receivers and so much competition that's going to be going into training camp. Even though we're not too confident in Terrence as number 2 wide receiver, there is going to be the highest competition there's ever been this past year. Coming into this training camp with Switzer, Beasley, Lucky, Bryce Butler, Noah Brown, all those guys. It's all good. It's all set. No need to worry about bringing in anything from the offensive side of the ball unless like a lineman pops up or something, maybe, depending on what happens during training camp with health and stuff.
Like you said, maybe we're not completely sold on Terrence as the number 2, but there's a solid core there. There's camaraderie between the guys. There's a reason why they brought them all back, like we said before. The only person that I would want to replace Terrence with is possibly another number 1 receiver, and that's not on the market. Definitely not with, Macklin's gone. I consider him, a number 1 receiver, definitely on the lower end, eking between 1 and 2, but there's really no one that they can sign that will really give any more competition than there already is. So that does it for the fantasy and reality trades that we have. If you like this video and you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe at Dos and Tres.
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to all the latest news and events, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Dos and Tres YT, and hit that bell to get notified whenever we put out a new video.
Peace.
Peace, YouTube. Happy Father's Day to everybody. All the dads. Peace.
Okay, it's rap packed to my pulse flat. We keep it real, no false rap. I got 4 cars and they all black. Got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling. My phone off and she calling. I'm like, yeah, what it do? Penthouse, man, what a view. Fall back cause I'm coming through with my whole team. They coming too, that's real.